So tonight, we'll talk about special tools, and then we'll talk about other things. So special tools in no particular order. So I got to stand up because I've got a whole lot of these, and I only got the camera on my laptop, and it's woefully inadequate. The focal depth, or I don't know lenses, but something like that is so short that you got to be right on top of stuff. So anyway, here's the first one. Here's a U-bolt turned sideways. What's this thing for? This is so you can work on a rack and pinion. So the distance between here is the distance between the bolts on it, like an MGB rack and pinion. So you bolt the rack up and tighten it up here, put the bottom part of this guy in the vise, and now you don't have to squeeze the rack and pinion to do whatever you're going to do to it. Take it out, oil it, add things to it, clean it, change bushings, bearings. Here's this tool that I put up yesterday on the picture. So this is made out of that nut that's at the back right-hand side of the engine, 68 through 80, that holds the air injector rail. So you don't need the air injector rail. You can take this off. Or you can use the brass nut that comes off the thermostat housing if you've taken the emission stuff off. And then put a 5/16 bolt out on this end, because right now it's a 3/8 bolt. But it's got a 5/16 24 thread, and you can screw this in to the grease retainer, the grease cup on an MGB, grab the other end of this with a pair of vice grips and just pull it straight out. Tom Longa, my first business partner, who I invited to come on tonight, he can't. He's there's a play practice in Bar Harbor, Maine. Said he uses a pipe about that big around to slide up to that dust housing and tap, and it pushes it in very nicely. Here's a handy little thing that came out of my Brit tool kit, and that's a socket that's a flexible extension that go around corners. Is that cool or what? I mean, you can have a U joint, a wobble socket, or you can have a U joint on the end. But this is kind of cool, and this is really handy for up underneath the dashboard sometimes. So, and here is one of my only two non-British or non-American sockets. This is a 10 millimeter, because 10s and 8s show up. Here's another tool that I put up for in the pictures. So it's hollow. It's a 7/16. It's a little bit bigger up inside there, and I've cut two slots on the end. It's a pretty crude device, but this is a 77 through 80, and it'll catch the nut, excuse me, on the inside of the gear lever knob, put it down inside and just spin it, and you can tighten or loosen the nut on the inside of the gear knob. I had to make that. Here's another. This is really special. This is a piece of wood dowel wrapped in some masking tape, but this is a dummy lay shaft for a T-type gearbox. The lay gear needle bearings are not caged, so you got to hold them in place with grease. And to keep them from falling out of place, you put in the dummy lay shaft, which is as long as the lay gear and the thrust washers and the end washers. And when it's all into place, and you want to replace this with the original lay shaft, you just push the new lay shaft in, and it pushes this out. It doesn't have to be steel. Here's a pair of battery post pliers. You can see, I want to show you here that they're tapered. They're tapered so that they can get down inside of an American style clamp, and you squeeze them and it opens it up and expands them. Nice old crude, real wobbly, not very nice, not very high quality. I've had these for well over 50 years. This is another one that I had on the message that I sent out. This is for popping off the headlamp rings on an MGB or an MGC. You can also use a bottle cap opener that often has an end on it like this. You just slip this thing up underneath and then yell and go, yeah, yank it out, and the ring comes right off. This is a real nice extension. This is a Cornwell. Just saw the Cornwell dealer today. He's no longer the Cornwell dealer. Oldest serving Cornwell tool dealer in the United States. And they cut him off. They cut him off because he wouldn't toe the company line and sell great big expensive tools on credit, which apparently is where they make their money. So anyway, this is a real nice extension. It's a 3/8 extension. Put a ratchet in one end, or you can use it as a screwdriver. I've got one like this for 3/8. I've also got one like this. Well, obviously that's the one in my hand. And I also have one just like this for 1/4 inch extensions. That's pretty cool. I took an old, nasty, broken up, see, there's that mute all. We're gonna hit that again, and there we go. So here is a broken off part of a bottom of a distributor. You know, the top of the distributor used to be up here, and it's just all buggered up on the top, but it's got this ring on it. It's got this ring. And when you're building an engine and you go to put that clamp into place, the clamp that clamps the distributor, you've got to get the two holes concentric. That is the hole in the block and the hole made by the clamping plate. So this thing's just great. I used to have a real nice one. I left it with Forrest, made for me by Rob Nortier. This is a bi-square socket. So it's not 6-point or 12-point, it's 8-point. It's a 1/4 inch bi-square socket, meaning 8 points, and it's on a swivel. Okay. So when you go to adjust rear brakes on an MGB, you can just put this thing right onto the rear brakes. And if you've got an extension that's 1.5 feet long and you're standing underneath the car's on a hoist, you can just swing this thing around, loosen the adjuster, grease it, and then move it all the way back in. It's so much handier than, where's my RB? I guess I didn't bring my RB 404 hand tool for doing this, but this bi-square 5/16 is really handy. Excuse me, bi-square quarter 5/16 is the midget. This is the flexible knife that I have here, and this is great for pushing out the main bearings out of an MGA or an MGB engine. You can only change 1 on the 3 main and 3 out of 5 on the 5 main. But what else are you going to do? You're going to take the engine out of the car and take the crank out. You can always do that. But if you're going to do just a kind of a repair, this thing's really handy. You can get in there, get the cap off, and push the bearing with this, and this will curl right around and follow. And it's spring loaded, so it's going to hit the block, not the crank. So really handy. Here I've got a blunt chisel. So most chisels, you know, are got a real sharp end on it, but look at this one. This one's got a really blunt end. And if you're tapping over a lock tab and you use a sharp chisel, then you're just putting more marks in it and fatiguing it. But this is for taking the lock tab that you'd find on the rear axle on a Banjo MGA or MGB, or the lock tab on the cam tab on the MG on the B series engine. But anyways, it's really handy. Just you have to sacrifice one of your tools, but it works. This, of course, is the snap tool, and I think I probably got this off eBay. I don't know, along with a bunch of snaps. This thing is just great, you know, for putting together the female part of the snap. The male part of the snap often is held with a screw into the bodywork. But this would go around through the tonneau cover or whatever it is that you've got going. There's no end at this age. At this age, there's no end. Gotta be careful, I'm using a computer here. No end to magnets, right? Little magnets, big magnets. Because when you drop stuff on the floor, unless John Clark happens to be there and can pick it up for you, he helps me out as often as I'm up the shop. These things are just great. And this little tiny one will fit down inside a 5/16 hole and pull out a ball bearing out of a gearbox. This thing will pick up a pretty good sized piece of bolt or nut or bracket or something when it's fallen to the center of the car. See, what else have I got here? I've had tools made for me over a period of time. Here's that dreadful, unnecessary 90-degree drive that goes on the bottom of the gearbox on the MGB and MGC. And this thread on this guy is British Standard brass thread. So this is quarter 26. Well, you can't call McMaster Car, they don't have a die for quarter 26. So I had a guy make me one. So and it's not really a die, it's a thread chaser. But it's a British Standard brass thread. And I can use this on the fittings on the gearbox itself. Around here, it's just handy. And when you're trying to pull the speedometer housing, the brass speedometer housing off the T-type gearbox, there's nothing to grab a hold of. So you end up grabbing a hold of the threads with a pair of pliers, trying to turn it. Grab it with this. Grab this with your vice grips and comes right out. So, but you got to have somebody who can make taps and dies for that. Down inside an all synchro gearbox, down inside the B and C gearbox, 68 through 80 is a nut. This nut that holds the main shaft together. And there's a lock tab. There's a lock tab that you fold over so it won't unscrew during operation. And you need to get it out if you're going to save the lock washer. And why not? Because when you put it back together, you'll often get it into a different position than it was used before. You need a special little chisel to get down in here to chisel away at the and push that lock tab back into place so you can unscrew this guy. All kinds of fun stuff. Here's a tool I made for determining top dead center. Okay, this is a stop. So it's an old spark plug. I hollowed it out, drilled it out. It took a while. Put a long bolt through it, put a nut on the bottom side of it and ground it off a little bit. Now you put it down inside the cylinder, turn the engine over by hand, slowly, and the piston comes up, hits this guy, you mark the front pulley, and then you move the piston back down and bring it back up again, and you mark the pulley, and the distance between the two marks on the pulley, when you cut that in half, is top dead center. So that's the poor man's centering tool made out of an old spark plug. I showed this nice set of pin spanner for taking the oil pump out of a LH overdrive. This is a snap-on. It's oh no, I lie. It's a Blue Point. I can't read the part number on it though. So anyway, that's handy. And then Tucker Madawick made this for me. Maybe he made 30 of them, gave them all around the trade. I don't know, but I use this for pulling that dipstick out of the MGB 1963 through 1974. Oh my gosh, that dipstick is just such a bugger. Some people tie rope onto it or twine. The secret is once you pull it out, once you do get it out, it's got 2 O-rings on it so it doesn't leak. That's like 3 O-rings too many. So take 1 O-ring off. So when you put it back in, the next time you pull it out, it's so much easier to extract from the top of the gearbox. It's horrible. You're down in there, if you've done this, you're yanking, all of a sudden it pops out, your hand goes up, and somebody who's put the radio in or something or others used screws that are way too long and they're sticking out, and you open up the back of your hand and bleeds more on the inside of your car. Anyway, thank you, Tucker Madawick from Bloomington, Indiana, for making me this little cool tool. I showed this before. This is just, if you look back in the Q section on the workshop manual, there's all the special tools. And if you're run into a place and you're looking at it and it says use special tool 18G 2111, go back there and see what 18G 2111 looks like and figure out how you can make it out of old parts like this, or a hammer and a pair of vice grips or whatever. So this is to help assemble the sliding hub. I did not have one of these for a T-type. A couple of months ago, I called out and asked Forrest if he had one. And by the time he found it, I had already come up with another method, and that was using six duplex nails. Oh my gosh, it was complicated. 6 duplex nails and a great big band clamp, and tightening it up so all the balls would contract into the sliding hub. It's a whole lot easier if you're using some good tools. I got a reach here. So when you're trying to take a stud out, you can use vice grips. That works. Doesn't work on aircraft. You don't want to have any stress risers. You don't want to have any marks in the stud that might end up fracturing. So this is the very earliest of a stud extractor. You got a wheel. The wheel comes around and the wheel is serrated. You can see, and it comes around and jams the stud here, and then you turn it and it jams up against her, and then the whole stud will turn out real crude, very difficult to use. It keeps slipping off and so forth. So then, oh my gosh, I mean, everybody ought to have these stud extractors. I mean, these things are just so friggin' cool. They've got serrated rollers in there. They do leave marks sometimes on the studs, so you can't use it for aircraft. But it is so nice. They're so nice. You just put it over the stud and begin to unscrew, and the stud comes out. Maybe with some force or something, but you go to put the stud back in, it goes right back in. It's just, they are so wonderful. I hope the guy that invented those, is living in $1 million house. That'd be so nice. But if you're, I was reminded by Tom Long this morning. He said, "Well, whoops, I just put something under my mouse. Just a moment here. There we go. All right, got it back. There is a better stud extractor. These are all for the French metric threads in an X-Pag gearbox. So here we've got a conical thing here that will thread over the stud. So you can actually see that inside there's threads. And so you spin this down over the stud, and then you take this guy. Oh, this guy's already set to go. And when it's over the stud, then you tighten the top of this guy, and it pulls this outer sleeve over that conical surface, pulls the sleeve over the conical surface, and jams the threads of the inside against the threads on the stud, and you get no thread distortion. So this is real expensive. This is a snap-on kit. And it's great. I mean, you do not have any problem at all. Let me keep going here. I had this nice Lucas bezel tool. I used to have one that said Lucas on the side, but it's gone. Maybe I loaned it to Rob Nortier to copy to make these, and this is what I got back. I used to have a couple of these, but this will handle the large bezels, and this will handle the small bezels on the dash of an earlier, prior to 1968 MG, where you've got the paddle switches before you come up with the rocker switches. It's got a hole through it for a Tommy bar, so you can slip something through it and get a little extra torque on it. Let's say you're working on the rear axle on your MGA, and there's an octagonal nut back there. There's also an octagonal nut on a midget too, but on the back of an MGA. And let's say that you're putting the bearing back on and you're using a punch, and which you shouldn't do, using a flat chisel. And all of a sudden you hit the threads. You hit the threads and you go to put that nut back on. Oh my God, the threads are buggered up. They're huge. What are you going to do? Use a thread file. So the thread file is labeled here. You can see it's got 9 threads per inch or 10 threads per inch or 27 threads per inch, or I can't read that, 20, maybe 20 threads per inch. So there's a bunch of different thread files for the number of threads per inch, and you just use it as a file, and you file the threads straight again. Very tedious. You file them straight until you can get a die and put a die back on. So let's say that you buggered up the rear axle. Let's say you're in Pittsburgh and you've buggered up the threads on the right-hand side of your MGA. Fortunately, you did that side first and stopped before you damaged the ones on the left. Then you have to call me and borrow this die. Look at how huge this is. This is a 1 9/16, 1 9/16, 18 right-hand thread. And this cleans up the threads on the rear axle, only on the right-hand side. Fortunately, the guy that wanted it had buggered up the right-hand side, because you can't just call someplace and get a left-hand 1 9/16, 18 die. You have one made, $300 or $400. They aren't handily available. Then this is my pride and joy tonight. This is for those of you with MGAs know that when you're trying to put the brake line, a left-hand drive MGA, right-hand drive MGA, there isn't a problem. But a left-hand drive, there's a brake line that goes into the back of the master cylinder. It comes in straight down. And for love or money, you can't get a wrench on that. And it's your brakes, and you got to get it really tight. So here's a flare wrench that fits around the tube, 7/16. You put it in, you turn it, then you pick it up, and you put it back down, you turn it another 1/6 of a turn. It might take you a couple of minutes, but look at this. You can get it really tight. So that's, oh, wait. Terry, thank you to Terry Luft, who gave me a really nice stethoscope. So here's the stethoscope. It's got the sounder in here, and here's this long part of the stethoscope that comes down. But you affix this to your ears and listen against the engine. Listen against the alternator, generator, the water pump, all along the valve cover, and you hear the of bearings or rockers or whatever. And if there's something that sounds wrong, it'll show up here. Maybe you don't know what is wrong, but the noise will show up, and at least it'll give you an idea. Is it the water pump? Is it the alternator? You can take the fan belt off and begin to make those kinds of calculations, trying to figure that stuff out. But boy, the stethoscope is really sweet. So I got a whole bunch more at the shop, but that's just sort of a bunch of stuff I wanted to show. And I've made it out of old tools and a welder. I've made it out of factory parts. I purchased the stuff straight up, like the thread file and the pin spanner. So you can, everyone's got their own special tools. We're doing special stuff. And I invited anyone who had one to show off their special tool tonight. So if you've got a special tool, holler and let's see what it is.
Well, John, you have a real fancy red device for getting the ball bearings back into your sliding hub on a T-type.
Yeah.
I showed this once before. We welded it together.
Oh, look at
I
that.
think
Oh my
it's
God.
six little verticals that
Yeah.
are sloped at the right angle,
Yeah.
and you just slide it down and pops it in. Of course, the better thing is don't take the dadgum thing apart to start with. But if you do take it apart and you can find all the little ball bearings, this will do the job for you.
That's very cool. That's very cool. I used, you know, I don't have one yet, but I use an old per second, you know, the outside part, the slider, and just to grind away on the inside. But yeah, that's pretty intense. That took a long time to make that tool,
I
but
think it took Peter maybe 45 minutes.
about as long as it took me. John Clark can vouch for me here, but it took quite a while to take 8 10-penny nails and a hose clamp and get the same effect. So anyway, that's Judd. That's real cool.
John Oldroyd here in Canada.
Yeah,
Am I on?
you are.
I am. Thank you. Nice to see you, John, and thank you for everything you're doing all the time. I have a banal suggestion underneath all the wonderful stuff that you put out. This is a little tool which I find quite useful every now and then, and it is so simple. It's used on bicycles, it's used on motorbikes, it's used on any kind of thing. It's called a bone wrench.
A bone wrench. Oh, look at this. Okay.
Is a bone wrench.
I've seen those before. Now the bone makes sense. Okay.
Well, just to rub it in a little bit, John, I guess you know my accent, you know me. And this is something that's been kept as an English secret for many, many years. It's mainly used on bicycles. But what it is to describe it, is it has a series of different size nut adjustments, including one on the end.
Oh, look at that. Okay.
Now, and then I turn it around, and you see, I haven't had any applause yet. You turn it around, and it's got just a larger set of the same kind of a thing. And this particular one happens to be metric. And you wouldn't understand anything about that in the US, but but you would, John, but that's a different story. So at the same time, I have another one who's, they're closely married, these two, which is imperial, or empirical, or whatever you like to call it.
A bone wrench.
It's a bone wrench.
Yeah.
And it's a strange thing. I use it every now and then, particularly useful in removing steering wheels. Sorry, let me make. Okay. It's called a bone wrench, or a bone, or a dog bone wrench.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, they're particularly useful in removing steering wheels from MGBs. So
okay.
you take the little plastic cap off, and you find the right one that fits, and it's handy. Now, you can't use it everywhere. You can't use it to, let's say, remove a wheel, remove a tire, remove a rim, or anything like that. But for handy dandy getting round to certain things, it's not for everything, for everyone. But then again, every now and then, one in the console, arm console, comes in very handy every now and then, just in case. Anyway.
Okay.
That's my story.
Hey, thank you.
That's my story. It's not good for dogs.
Right.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your time.
Hey, you're welcome.
And thank you for everything you do. It's lovely.
Very kind. Thank you.
For my Pope.
So who else has got a tool here? Anybody bring something?
Let's not go anywhere with that one.
Yeah, all right. Funny.
Yes, cool.
Bob.
We were calling you from Oregon, the Dallas, Oregon. we're just on the West Coast. We're on our-
Okay,
And so far, no problems. So I'm not calling you for problems. Well, except we lost the cap
For a fuse
for the
box.
fuse box. But I stopped at British Parts Northwest, and it's an interesting little warehouse. They don't even advertise. They're not supposed to sell over the counter, but I got one. But that's not what I'm. The tool, special tool. It's not something I invented, but it's a deep 5/16 quarter-inch drive socket for adjusting the brakes, the back brakes. You use a quarter-inch drive ratchet, put it on. So if you have any kind of a wide tire, it's just easy. It's out and then,
And you use it upside down.
yeah, you use it, put the quarter-inch drive over the adjustment, and
The
boy, that
5/16
works.
fits
That
over
works
the
great.
Quarter-inch drive.
yep, very cool. Yeah, you can't get in too much trouble with a 1/4-inch drive. With a 3/8 drive, if you're really strong, you can crack it apart, but yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah, little ratchet works good. And usually Gloria will do that because she's not as strong.
Oh, gosh.
But we're having a good time.
John, it's Tom Gunderson. How are you?
Hey, pretty good.
I found a use for to get the plug off the back of a MGA differential for the oil train.
Sure.
I went down to Ace Hardware and bought a square keyway, and it's a little bit too large, but you grind it down just a little bit. You can slide it in there, and your crescent wrench will take that plug right out.
Thank you. You can purchase a 1/2-inch drive or a 3/8 drive socket that's especially made for that. It's about 7/16, and it's got just a little bit of a taper to it. I've got one on my tool board, which I use, except for 1980s, where they all of a sudden, why after all those years they switched to a hex. But yes, thank you very much. I've seen that before. That little short piece, and you can get onto it with a crescent wrench, and you get that, because once you crack that thing loose by 1/4 of a turn, it just unscrews. So,
John.
Alan.
Yeah. I just want to mention that Steve Christensen, Old Parts, he
Yes.
makes that tool, or a tool like that. It's a nice little wooden handle on it, and it's very classy. So at least he used to make them. I have one. That's very, very handy. I've got one other tool here, but I've got it on a video. I don't know if I can show a video or not.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay. Well, you go on ahead, and I will try and see if I can dig it up. And
Okay.
okay, thank you,
Thank you.
and thank you for everything you do.
Well, that's very kind. Thanks.
John,
So-
I want another tool that somebody
Yeah.
made for taking your carburetors off and getting them back together, get the linkage pieces back together. It can be a bear sometimes.
Yeah.
You can make it out of wood, but he made it out of 1/2-inch thick aluminum block. And you take the air cleaners off, of course, put this block, bolt it down onto the carburetors, take them off in unison, and do whatever you have to do. And when you put them back on, you don't have to. It's a real bear sometimes to get those linkage pieces back in. It works really, really well. But it wasn't my idea. Somebody.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before, but that makes all the sense in the world. You're just going in on the air cleaner flange side. So sure, just to hold it. Yep. I usually I balance them. I've got them balanced, and then I put the interconnecting
And what did you do with
with lots of grease.
What did you do with my,
And that's why I got that mute all button. So we'll make fun of Tony when he comes back. Anyway, I assembled the whole thing up, and then you got to hold it and get it, and then you got to jiggle it out. Yeah, so I can see the great advantage in having that block. Yep.
Hey, John, I just thought of something else.
Yeah,
Wait a
Chuck.
second. I put a spin-on adapter for the oil filter on my TD, and a friend of mine who's active on the MG Experience forum named Bud Kruger has basically, I think it's like a 3/4 inch deep well socket that he's cut 2 slots in it so that you can stick it in and get I don't remember exactly how it worked, but it was the only tool that would have done the job. And I don't have a picture, but there is a special tool to do that conversion from the a traditional canister oil filter to get the uh, uh, spin-on adapter
That,
on
that,
and good and tight.
that's for the horizontal pump.
Yeah, the horizontal one, yeah. And he'll mail it out to you and you mail it back to him, and that works out quite nice. If you can find him on the NG Experience and just look up the spin-on adapter.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Tony, what'd you go out to get there?
You're muted, Tony.
Yep, you're muted. You gotta unmute yourself. I muted you while you were gone.
Okay, it's a 7/16 bar stock.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It'll fit right on.
Yeah,
Been
okay.
using that for 55 years since I worked at a golf gas station. Also, I found this little tool, inherited from my father-in-law. That's that dog bone thing he was talking about. But mine's,
Yeah,
I have a
okay.
whole set of these tools that I got from my father-in-law. And one other thing was this to drive the pilot bearing into the crank. It was made, it'll fit for a MGB 5 main, probably a C. The only thing I had to do was I'd hit it when I first got this made, it was solid. So you'd hit it and it bumps right back at you because you're hitting into a blind hole. So what I did was I had him drill out a hole all the way through so it would relieve the pressure. So you put this on, put the thing on, you can tap it right in and not mushroom it.
A shouldered mandrel.
Yes, okay.
A shouldered mandrel for the, yeah.
And I had a friend of mine, he had worked at Hydromatic here in town, and one of his machinists made it for me. He kept it handy. And this little tool here, this bar stock, been using that since it was worked at a golf gas station because my boss was too cheap to buy the one that you could actually use with a wrench.
You can put a breaker bar in the end of it. Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you. Got anybody else here with any special tools?
John, I'll chime in.
Sure. I knew you'd be there, Pat. Thank you.
I was gonna assemble my synchro hub assembly tool, but you mentioned the hose clamp and 6 nails, so that works quite well. But I have some homemade slide hammer attachments. This one is for pulling main caps out. Oh,
Okay.
man, what a difference as opposed to the way I used to do it.
Oh
And
my
then,
gosh.
Knockoffs that fit on my slide hammer make pulling stuck
Okay.
hubs off. And one I used just the other night was this hook, which
Ladyfinger.
will fit in and pull the pilot bushing out of the crank on an
Okay.
MGB. After I found out my Chinese pilot bushing puller did not work, but this worked like a charm. So just homemade slide hammer attachments. I don't know how you fix cars without a slide hammer.
I had, what was I trying to get off? I think I was trying to get off the hubs off my daughter's GT rear axle, and usually, is it that? No, I was trying to get the half shafts out, out of the housing. And because the hubs, you pull on them crack them with a hammer and they just fall off in your hand.
Mhm.
But the getting the half shafts out, you take the on a Salisbury diff, take the washer and put it on backwards. So you get a flat on the backside. And I took the 3 fingers from my slide hammer and grinded around it, but it was a cheap slide hammer, and at my age, in my athletic infirmities, I could not get that half shaft to budge. I had to wait until one of my landlords came by. I said, Jim, you're younger than I am. I think he's a year younger than I am. I said, run the slide hammer, get that thing out of there. And he tunk, 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 bingo, is out. It's just, you're right. You've got to have a slide hammer. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And a landlord.
The landlord who owns MGs. Yep. Yep. Thank you. Thanks. We got anybody else with any little handy dandy tools that you've got?
John?
Yeah.
John?
Yeah.
John?
Gary.
John?
Yes.
Gary Greenspoon in the dark.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here naked, and what I'm about to describe is a really wonderful, simple thing that you can see on the MG Experience. Is when you're jacking up your MG on the front, there are 2 little holes
Yes.
in the cross member. And so the device, which you have to imagine, is you take a thick piece of wood and affix 2 dowels with a bolt going through so they're sturdy at the correct distance between the 2 holes. But then the next thing is on the bottom side is you just remount a circular enough so that it fits on top of your jack, your push jack, right? So it doesn't slide.
Yeah, that's a real fascinating idea.
And the image, that image is on the MG Experience someplace.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Welcome.
The corollary to that is on a T-type. The drain plug on a T-type is 1/8 BSP and sticks out about that far out of the bottom of the drain plug. And you can put your paddle jack, your trolley jack underneath that and lift the whole car. But it seems wrong to put all that weight on that little tiny thread. It'll handle it. I mean, lots of cars have been jacked there. So the cool trick is to do just the opposite of what Gary had with his. You take a block of wood and you drill a hole in it, and then you put that on the bottom side of the differential, and you can put your trolley jack underneath that and lift it up without putting that enormous force on the drain plug. Thanks.
Hey, John, I got a little piece here.
Yeah.
So Rudy out in Pasadena.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine built this for me. It's a very simple device. It's just basically, it's a hex welded onto a bolt.
Yep.
It's got a nice little shoulder on there. And what you can do is use it to go into your hub and pull out that silly oil cap that's sometimes so hard to pull. And I'm able to use the bolt on this side and screw it in, and then it pulls that puppy right out. Super simple, but works really, really well. I've had this for maybe 25 years, and I've used it quite often, actually.
Yeah, setting up wheel bearings on a wire wheel hub. Oh my gosh, everything's all way down inside there. Oh my gosh.
Yep. So it worked great.
Great. Thank you.
Quite welcome.
John, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good,
Sandy.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see if I can show this to you. I made a tool to hold the inner tie rod.
Okay, let's see. This is pretty fancy here. I'm all eyes.
All right, so this I think it's a 1.5 inch 3/4 drive socket.
Okay.
Because I ground off all the chrome so
okay.
that I could grab it with a pipe wrench. And the little slots in the sides here are a perfect 1/4 inch. So I got just some keyways, 1/4-inch keyways,
Okay,
and I ground them to fit inside here.
okay,
Came to a little triangle point, if you can get my drift. And it fits in here very nicely.
very cool.
And I can clamp this, see, I can't even remember how I all did this, but I end up using a vise. I guess, okay, so I'm holding on to the steering rack, and then I can get a good pipe wrench on here, and I could spin this thing apart. Oh, okay, so I think I remember now. All right, so I have that sticking out. I can get a pipe wrench on this, and
Hold it up higher.
I got a pipe wrench on this. I can't even remember what I was using to grip this, but there's no marks on it.
Well, I always used a vise,
I probably
And-
put it in a vise or something,
and
but
it
I could,
makes horrible marks, but then I chuck it up in the lathe when it was all done and smooth it all off again. So that's
Right.
really,
but
that's
there's
cool.
no marks on this
Yep,
because this holds it nice.
yep.
I just
Very
got these
cool.
held in with Scotch tape right now.
Yeah, I got it. Very cool. Yep, very cool. I've never seen that before, ever. Sandy, thank you very much.
Pleasure's mine.
Anybody else who's got some show and tell stuff here? You don't have to wait to the end. You can come in now.
Yeah, John, I've got a carburetor wrench that I've made. I look at the thrift stores and the wrench piles, and if there's a 1/2 inch or a 9/16, I always bring it home because I wouldn't want to do this with it.
Pick it up in the air. Oh, yeah, okay. What's that for?
Getting the nuts off the carburetor to
Okay,
pull them off the manifold. And I've got one that takes the manifold off of the engine. Or if I've got a flare nut that's in the wrong place,
yep.
I simply modify a wrench to where it becomes a flare wrench and fits right in there.
One of the greatest, I didn't bring mine along, one of the greatest flare wrenches you can use is you get a 3/4 inch wrench from the hardware store out of the bucket that says mechanics quality, your choice, $2, you know, because it doesn't have to hold any torque here. And you cut the thing off until it's about that tall all together. I mean, just a little bit of a tail, you know, coming off the bottom of him. You put a slit in it and you can reach up behind the dash to tighten up that nut on the back of the choke cable, you know, 1963 through 1974. Oh my gosh, I mean, there's just no other way you can do that. And let me make just another comment about choke cables, is when you buy a new choke cable, it comes with a nut that's about twice as thick as this piece of paper, right? You just can't believe how thin that nut is. And you can't get a hold of it, you can't get the thread started. Throw that nut away, go to the hardware store, get is it 7/16 20, 1/2 inch 20? I can't remember off the top of my head. And I remember the Hastings part number for piston rings today when the guy called, 5779, but I can't remember what size that damn nut is on the back of the choke cable. Anyway, then with a nut that's that wide, then you start him on, and then you got lots of purchasing area for your flare wrench to go right up in there, and you can get that thing snugged up really nicely. Thanks, Steve.
When you put that choke cable on, should you put on a star washer to kind of lock it?
On the backside,
Yes.
yeah, it comes with one.
Okay, oh, it does, okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
John, here's a couple quick ones.
Sure.
When you showed that magnet a little while ago, I was reminded of one of my favorite picker-upper tools. This has got this little claw on the end of it.
Yeah.
And you push it and the claw opens up and you can grab stuff you'd never get with a magnet.
Yep. Well, sometimes if it's fallen down in the chassis, I mean, everything's metallic, so you can't fight that. You can't fight that magnet. It attaches itself to the body or the frame. You can't get what you're after. So those Bulgarian nose pickers, that's what one of my mechanics called his.
Exactly what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the other one, because I just made it the other day. I stopped at the Salvation Army and bought this like cake spatula thing. It had a round end on it, bought it for
Yeah.
$1 and ground it into a hook because I needed to scrape some caulk and stuff out of the space between the wood and the metal on a Morris Woody wagon, and made this little hook to get right in there. Works great. And it cost me $1.
There we go. That's the bottom line. So it's very cool. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
And don't forget to don't count out wives and daughters to come and get things for you too. They come in handy at times.
That's all those little fingers, all those little
Oh,
tiny
yeah.
fingers. Yeah,
Oh,
I tell the story of trying to get the 4 bolts into the overdrive, mount on my daughter's MGB GT, and another guy and I, who's got the same size hands I do, we were under there one day for, I'll say an hour, and that's conservative. I think we're under, and we used those Bulgarian nose pickers. We used magnets. We used everything. We could not get that thing started. 3 of them would start, so we'd undo the 3, and we'd go at it with a different combination. Could not do it. The next day I spent an hour underneath there, and I'm just cursing up a storm, and it doesn't help. And finally, my daughter, who was working on the top side of the car, also let out a string of invective asking me what I was trying to do. And I said, well, I'm trying to get this bolted. She said, well, here, I'll do it. And I said, well, you can't do it. You're a girl. So just like that, she's down underneath the car, and just with those little tiny nimble fingers, just starts it right up in there. Just no problem. So anyway, yes, smaller hands, smaller people. And we used to put Lisa, well, when you go to adjust you're redoing an MGB and you want to get the trunk lid adjusted, that's dicey. So the easiest way to do this is to take everything out of the trunk, put down something soft inside, a blanket or something or other, and give your small person a flashlight and a screwdriver if they need one, and show them how it opens. It's no mystery. All they have to do is move the one latch, and it pops right open. And then you close the trunk with them in it. And then you try to open it. And if it doesn't open, they'll open it up. And you figure out what to do, and you bend something, and you try it again and again and again. And finally, it works. The last time I did that was up in Traverse City, I think, or was I reminded of that? Richard Liddick.
It was Traverse City, John. I have a video of it.
I think, whose daughter was that? Was that Richard Liddick's daughter?
I don't know, but she had white pants on, and I couldn't believe she was climbing in the trunk.
Yeah, and that's just so anyway, yes, people, a second set of hands or a smaller person. Yeah, very cool.
Okay, John, I had to step away for a moment. Tom Gunderson, you were talking magnets. I don't know if anybody mentioned the magic finger. It's like a glove.
I don't know.
It's like a finger of a glove with a magnet on the tip.
Okay.
And you put it on your hand, on your index finger or whatever, and that'll hold it up there to get it started.
Yes, very cool. I usually use grease.
Hell, okay.
At the beginning of the summer, John Clark came up to the shop, and all his lifted dots in his car were all loose or all crappy. And so we got 8 new ones, and 3 of them you can change relatively easily. I mean, you got to take the soft top off, you got to take the interior panel out, but you can reach them in about 1. Oh my gosh. So you take your finger, your middle finger, which, and put a bunch of grease on it, and you balance the nut on there. And then on top of that, with some more grease on top of that, an internal star washer. You put your finger way down in there until you can see it through the hole, and then bring the lifted dot stud down, and yep. So anyway, the magnet works through the magic finger. Write that down because that sounds so cool.
Here it is, John.
Okay.
Magnetic finger.
Oh, it's a magnetic finger.
Amazon.
All right.
I love
Everything's
it.
from everything's from Amazon.
It works great.
Okay. So, okay. So we are, we're at 1 hour, and do we have any more entries into our special tool category?
I don't know if you'd call it a special tool, but you know, getting the dust cover over the fork or the clutch fork on the side of the transmission, sometimes they rip.
Yeah.
So we found a long neck bottle, plastic bottle, cut it off at the right spot and put grease on it, and it just slides right over and onto it. But you got to ruin your long neck bottle, which is
okay. Okay.
But it really well.
Thank you.
Last one we did, we ripped it. So.
Yep, I usually fight it with I love, you know how much I love grease. So grease and Glide and stuff. I remember fighting those with the screwdrivers, but yeah, putting something to expand it as it comes down. What a deal. Very nice.
Worked good.
Excellent. Excellent.
John, I can tell you, not a tool that I made, but one I wish someone would make. And that would be a set of sockets that are magnetic, by the way, and that have a sleeve at the business end where you can retain a lock washer. So if you're putting a nut and a lock washer on a bolt that you can't reach otherwise, you can't see it, then that would hold it all together for you, and I'm sure that would make a lot of things easier.
That sounds cool. Sounds cool. Isn't there an app on your phone for that? Yeah, that sounds good. And then of course, what you got to have is some sort of device that you put up next to it, and it zeroes out the magnetism. So when you get a bolt stuck in there, you don't need a nut stuck in there. You can actually get it out. You don't have to get out a pair of needle nose or expandable pliers or something. So yeah, make sockets. Why not?
I bought back in about 77, I bought a set of sockets wrenches from Sears Craftsman back when it used to really be Sears Craftsman. And the socket set came with little inserts color coded for each size socket that was a little magnet with a plastic surround, almost looked like the thing for an optical pickup at a distributor, and it would fit into the various size sockets to do precisely what you're talking about, hold the nut or the bolt head if that's what you were doing. I don't know about the washer part, but and then you put it on and take the thing off, and the magnet would more or less stick to the socket, but sometimes you'd have to take it off. I still have them. I think I probably used them twice.
Maybe that's how popular they turned out to be. Alan, hey, you can sell them to Alan.
I'll send you a picture.
Yes, I'll buy them.
I had got a lot of welding tools and stuff, and one of the tools for welding is a 90-degree triangle magnet. It's about 3 or 4 inches, and it holds stuff in place while you're welding it. And I use it to keep sockets together, not rolling all over the place in the car when I'm working on it. And after a while, they become magnetized. So that's a cheap way to go. Not terribly magnetized, but they'll hold a nut on or a washer or whatever.
Okay.
So it comes in handy. And I don't lose so many sockets.
Yep. Yeah.
John, I always use masking tape, just wrap one row around the nut, and then it fits tightly inside the socket. It'll keep it in there. And if I've got a washer, I use masking tape for that. You've always got masking tape around because you may need that to slow down the flow of blood on your hand someplace.
Yeah. What, you don't have Band-Aids? It's like, no real mechanic has Band-Aids.
No,
Certainly
but you've
not.
always got, masking tape.
And toilet paper, yep.
Yeah.
That'll-
Super
or
glue.
Electrical tape, yep, that'll do it, yep.
The other thing that I've often done with sockets, talk about masking tape, I just use a little piece of newspaper or something or whatever is handy and stuff that inside the socket, or wrap the nut in it and slip it in there and it'll hold it in place long enough to get it started.
Where do you find a piece of newspaper?
Oh, lying around my.
Oh my gosh. Oh, life changes so much. Yep, so.
John, if you'll permit me, if it's all right now, no?
Yeah.
Seeing as we've got down to the level of toilet paper and newspaper and the bottom of the barrel, shall we say, but there's one thing here that I have that I get a bit of use out of it. It's mainly cosmetic because essentially, it's for cleaning your teeth.
Yeah. You get those from Alan, do you?
It also works on removing wax in your teeth. And you can also do it for, I'm not going to go up my nose. Anyway, this is a little gadget that between one thing and another, I found has an application for use in MGs. And there are many uses. In particular, you can clean little spots that those little dusty spots for the purists that have to get rid of every last piece of dust. You can get into the last little corners with one of these little gadgets. I hope you can see it, but
yeah,
that's what it is. It's quite obscene, really, when you think about it. But this actually works very, very well. Now, digging into the vents and things like that, and the dashboard, and any corners in the engine that you think are a little bit need tidying up, particularly the concourse type guys. We don't have that many. But recently it came to my attention when all of a sudden I needed a particular tool. And it was to do with the strip of rubber that goes along the top of the door, which is really a squeegee.
The white, yeah, the outer seal.
On the window. Now, there's a strip of rubber there that once you've replaced it and put it back, I had to replace it. There's a strip of, I forget now, 9 rivets or so to put them back in. They're a bloody nuisance, but it can be done. Now, once all that's been done, and I hope in my case, I'd had the car painted not too long ago, the little rubber strip was folded onto the inside of the upper rim. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yep.
So between one thing and another, taking it all to bits and trying to do the whole thing properly again. No, I suddenly remembered I've got this thing here that I use for cleaning my computer. And that's all it is. And I just slipped it in under the rubber and slid it along very quietly without trying to disturb any other bugs that might, and it worked. It works. And for that, you can use it for all sorts of other things. Slipping rubber stuff out from when it gets tucked underneath where you don't.
Very nice.
And it's, the name of the maker is on here. Oh, let me see this. Somewhere in Chicago. Let me see. Yes, it's made by Butler, as in somebody who looks after you when you're in a hotel, Butler Company in Chicago.
All right.
And I think it's a dental tool one way or the other, but anyway, a little bit of fun. Clean your ears out. You can do it for all sorts of things. Make sure it's properly sterilized before you do any other work with it.
Okay. Thank you.
I got one more thing, John. Tom Gunderson here.
Yes, sir.
This is a liquid tool, and I found that this liquid is called Goo Gone, and I replaced my windshield recently, and everybody was saying you had to slick them up and use detergent and all this kind of stuff. Well, that makes after a while, gets a gooey mess everywhere. I use Goo Gone just to slick the glass and the rubber in putting the frame together. It worked like a charm, and then it kind of like dries up and goes away.
Go figure. Okay.
So,
Next,
and it's good as a cleaner too. It will clean real well.
GOOGONE, Goo Gone.
Yeah.
It's made for removing like adhesive residue.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay. Nice, okay,
Should I take a turn?
absolutely.
John, this is something that, this is a little straight slot screwdriver. I cut the handle off it so many years ago, I don't remember why I did it, but I found to adjust the mixture screws on my HAF carburetors, it's a perfect little
Okay,
tool to use.
all right.
Especially the rear carburetor, you can kind of get your hand underneath it. So why I made this, I don't remember, but I know it really comes in handy to adjust the mixture screws. So
Very cool. Yep. Yep. Yeah, those are that rear one, the front one too, but yeah, the rear one's especially difficult to reach with the air cleaner in place. So,
yeah,
yeah,
especially.
yep, yep. Thank you.
Hey, John, Rudy again.
Yeah.
Ran up to the garage and picked this thing up. So what it is a magnetizer and a demagnetizer.
Oh my, okay.
It's just a craftsman tool. I don't know how long I've owned it. So like when you're trying to put those little screws down into a distributor for points, all you have to do is run your screwdriver shaft through the positive side 3 or 4 times. You magnetize the tip of your screwdriver. You put the screw on there, you lend it all the way down, it'll hold on real nice. And the other side is, if I don't want to magnetize anymore, I just run it 4 times through the other side and it demagnetizes.
Okay, cool, very cool.
Super simple device, real nice. And like I said, it's just a regular Craftsman tool.
Very nice. Alan
Yep.
will buy that from you too.
I'll email my address to him.
Very cool.
John, it's me
Yes.
again. Everybody's running out to the garage. I got this. Is this what that fellow was talking about? Those
Oh
are
yeah, look at
magnet
that,
inserts.
sure.
Yeah.
Magnet
That's exactly
inserts.
it, yeah.
Very
These are
cool.
50 years old too. These are all my tools are like 50 years old. I got half the stuff you showed, all those old
Wait,
tools.
yeah, but that package isn't open, right?
No, if he wants it, he can have it.
Hey, there you go. There you go. Okay, so very cool. Very cool indeed. Yep, very nice. All right, I'm going to switch over to the chat section here because we got some questions on chat that are of generic. Here we go from Justin Schroeder. How does one test a kingpin? I have a vibration at specific speeds, which is believed to be wheels, row style, and tires. However, I'm concerned that it could be something other than the wheels and tires. So it's in the end, it's the wheels and tires. But if you want to check the kingpins, you can, if you got the car up in the air, you can put your shoulder up in the air like on a hoist. You can put your shoulder on the bottom of the front wheel and just stand up. And if the wheel goes up and down, even a little bit, it might be that the front cross member is loose from the frame of the car. That's not unusual at this age. It might be that the kingpin is loose up and down. So you can tell that. You can't look and do that yourself at the same time. So you gotta hire your brother-in-law or somebody with a big shoulder to go up and down. The other thing you can do is grasp the wheel at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock and wiggle the wheel in and out to see if you can get the wheel to do this, and look at the bottom. The top of the kingpin doesn't wear for whatever reason. But the bottom of the kingpin, which is about the diameter of your thumb, it's huge, that wears out a lot. And if you can see that the kingpin is moving independently of actually it's the stub axle, moving independently of the kingpin, then yes. There's also another measurement that you can take, crude, but you can see if there's free play there. by taking a long bar and going up through that little slot right out at the end of the A-arm, catching one of the bolts that holds the steering arm in place and levering the kingpin forward and backward and see if there's play. If there's play, it shows up in a noise, a clunk, when you're braking. If you're coming up to a stop sign, for instance, and you got your foot on the brake, and you get right down to the very end of the stop, and you just hear a clunk from the front end, right at the very end. That's the car continuing forward after the kingpin and brakes and wheel has stopped. So it's only moving 1/16 of an inch, but it's the whole weight of the car against the kingpins. But just by grabbing it 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock and wiggling the wheel, you can tell. But the problem probably lies in the fact that the wheels are no longer round. I mean, they're old wheels. The metal isn't very durable. So if you've got the car up in the air and you can spin the front wheel in front of you, spin it and just watch it. And if it's doing this, you can't get that out of it. You can put a two pounds of lead weight on there, and it's still going to wobble. It's still going to wobble, and that wobble then causes the coil spring in the front to go into a harmonic. That's what the front shocks are for. So if the front shocks are weak, that'll allow lots of vibration. If the front wheel bearings are loose, that'll allow vibration. So there's a lot of stuff up there that might be going on. My experience is that you haven't got a shaking steering wheel because the kingpins are bad. That wouldn't necessarily be it. It's almost always wheels and tires. So Justin, are you still on?
I am. I was listening closely. Thank you.
And you look like you're in a southern location, or is that just your backdrop?
Well, a little bit of both. This is my background. I think it's a California background. I'm in Virginia, so it's dark here, and I'm not in this lovely locale that we see behind me.
What year and model do you have?
It's a 77, and yeah, I appreciate everything that you've mentioned. Everything is new except for the actual kingpins themselves. So that braking clunk that you mentioned was actually resolved when I did the lower trunnion replacement of the components of that. So I did everything in there. So that's interesting that you mentioned that went away. And it really, I'm kind of I was asking about the kingpins because I really couldn't find any solid information on how to actually test that. But from your descriptions and from other things that I found, I would doubt that myself. And I'm still pointed toward the wheels and tires. It's just that they're a god awful expense if I go through that, and I just didn't want to hit myself in the head with a hammer after going through that expense and still having a vibration.
So what you can do, if the tires are over 10 years old, you got to change them anyway. But prior to that, there's lots of road style wheels out there. There's just lots, and they're old and they're bent, and so what? But you can send them to Diamond Wheel in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and they will cut the old rims off the centers, weld new rims on. When I had all 5 of my wheels done on an MGA about 5 or 6 years ago, it cost me $1,000 for 5 wheels. I dropped them off, they sent them back. It's obvious everything's, I mean, with this inflation, everything's more now, but that's one way of doing it. And when I had a vibration at 60 miles an hour, 60 to 70, course, right in there, course. And that has to do with a coil spring. Why did they make it? Why did they add 2 or 3 coils to it, or take a couple of them away so it didn't have a harmonic right there? Anyway, right at 60 or 70, that's where it shook. And it shook so badly I could never really drive it over 70 comfortably. Now I can drive it right up through 90, and it's like driving on glass. It's perfect. Diamond Wheel in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Okay, and thank you for that. And thank you for confirming the harmonic bit. I had heard or read something about it, but I wasn't quite sure where that harmonic came in and what components were affected, but that makes sense. The spring, which leads me to another thought, and I'm just asking this, it may or may not be relevant
Hey,
to
Lane,
ride
it's
and
Peter.
so forth.
Really sorry to call you in the evening. Something bad has happened. It looks like I've lost.
So I just muted everybody, so you gotta come.
That's okay, I'll come back.
No,
Thank you for
you're fine now.
So my thought was, my 77B, of course, would have the heavy bumpers on each end, but those had been removed because the previous owner was mid chrome bumper conversion. Well, I'm thinking about not doing that, but I put the stock springs in the front. And so I'm thinking about going to a lighter spring, or earlier spring model for a little softer spring. Advisable, not advisable?
No, I don't think it's gonna make a difference at all.
Okay. Yeah. I was doing some overthinking, and I was thinking, hey, maybe the springs are a little bit stiff. Maybe I would enjoy, a softer spring in the front from an earlier model that had a lighter front. So it's just a thought.
I think it's almost always the wheel. I tell people, you sit in your driveway and rev the engine up to $4,000, and then let it come back down the steering wheel, then shake. So it has to do with the wheels, and that's where all vibration begins. So it's just those little tiny imbalances. And your shocks are good.
Those have been replaced too. Yeah, like I said, everything's been replaced.
Okay.
I even replaced the little squishy blocks, the bushings for the cross members.
Okay.
So now, from what you've mentioned, I might go in there and retorque those pins and bolts just to be sure, because it's been a few years, maybe about 3 or 4 years.
They haven't loosened up.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thanks.
Hey, good luck.
Hey, John, can
Yes.
I jump in for a quick sec? You caught my attention there with the kingpin and the clunk right as you hit the brakes. I've got that on my 71B. I can hear it and sort of feel it right on the front left, just as I'm starting to press brake. You say it's the kingpin. Is the kingpin worn, or is it bushings?
The A-arms come down in the end, right? There's a tube. There's a tube there in the kingpin.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit mute all. There we go. But I don't want to lose you, so just come on back.
I'm here.
All right. So the kingpin has to rotate on that distance piece between the A-arm, and what ends up happening is it ends up with 4.5 slop. And the only way to sort of do it, you just take the whole front end apart and change all the pieces in there.
Okay. So is it a safety issue?
No.
Okay, just a nuisance issue.
Right. So the other clunk that you got, wire wheels or disc wheels?
I've got wire, and I've got
Okay,
one
so
broken
there's
spoke up there also.
So there's a chance that the spokes are loose too. The noise that I'm talking about usually happens at the end of braking. If yours happens at the beginning of braking, it might be the wheel. So you jack the front end up, you have somebody stand on the brake like car can't move, and grab the wheel, and how much does the wheel move? It's gonna move some. It just does. It's gonna move some. Compared to what? Well, compared to all the rest of them, and that's either because the hub's worn or the wheel's worn, or most probably both. So.
Okay, so they're painted steel. There's a painted steel spoke, and a lot of them appear to be pretty darn solid at this point.
Yeah, you can't adjust them.
No, so that's just.
But I'm talking about the splines. The splines.
Yeah. Okay.
Those splines get loose, and the wheel moves independently of the hub.
Right, but to tune the wheel, because I used to race
You
bicycles,
can't.
Okay.
If you get new wheels and they've got stainless steel spokes and nipples,
yeah,
maybe, but not the old ones. No, I just talking to it. Went in to pay my rent today, a couple of days late, and my landlord's a body shop, and there are 3 brothers that own it. They all have MGs, so it works out perfectly. And one of the guys on the front desk said, "Oh, I just saw this thing on Facebook Marketplace. Somebody's got 8 wire wheels for sale." And I said, "Yeah, I saw that too." And he said, "Well, first I thought it might be you. Are they worth anything?" And I just said, "Nope." No, you just got to start with the other ones. So.
Yeah, I'm thinking about going to knock off VTOs instead.
Yeah, those are cool.
So, okay, well, thanks a bunch for that.
All
Appreciate
right.
it. Okay.
Okay, so now we're going on, and Brad Schwartz says, to expand on the last question, how do we test front wheel bearings and tie rods? Remember that 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock test on the front wheel. If you can wiggle the wheel and it moves at 12 and 6, and you grab it at 3 and 9 and wiggle, and you get the same kind of movement, that's because the wheel bearings are loose. If you grab it at 3 and 9, that's what I mean to say, and wiggle it horizontally, have somebody else do that. You put your hand around the inner and outer tie rod ends. The inner tie rod end is underneath that is underneath the rubber boot on the rack and pinion. But the other one, and if you can, I mean, bingo, you can feel that there's something's not right. You can feel that there's play, if there is play. So that's the way that you do it. And really, it does take two people. One person wiggling the car and the other person feeling and watching, and one person moving the wheel. So the position of the brake pads can keep it from wiggling so much at 3 and 9. So grab it on the diagonal and try those. But you'll be able to tell whether the wheel bearings are loose, the kingpin's bad, or the tie rod ends are loose. So,
Great, thank you.
hey, you're welcome. Okay, Judd.
Yeah, but after I typed that up, you showed your dummy lay shaft with the tape on it.
Yeah, the wood dowel.
Yeah,
it
yeah.
works.
I got a regular actual lay shaft that works lovely,
Sure.
but you can't do it without it. You got to have something.
You got to have something. So we had at my old shop, I had, because we'd have 6 guys rebuilding T-type gearboxes on the same weekend. So we had a whole lot of those extra special tools. But the last time I did one, I didn't even have it. I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, duh, just take a piece of 1/2-inch dowel and put enough tape on it so it works. So, yeah. Let's see here. Would a paint key can work? Justin Schroeder asked. A paint key can, yes, to pull off the bottom of the headlamp rims on the MGB. Absolutely, it would. Gary Pretlow, I think my fuel pump is dead. No sound when key is turned. Is there an inline pump available? And I don't have access to a lift. So yes, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. So you can buy just a minute.
Facet.
Facet, thank you. A facet, F-A-C-E-T, and you want to limit yourself to about 3 pounds. Glenn's MG service in St. Petersburg, Florida says, I don't even fit SU fuel pumps anymore. They're way too expensive. They're real stupid and they don't work sometimes. And they fail. And the facet pumps never fail. And you can mount it up underneath the bonnet. You don't even have to take the existing pump out of the system because it's got the 2 one-way valves allow the free movement of fuel through the pump. So you just mount it somewhere between the fuel line and the carburetor and hook it up to the ground and the 3rd fuse down in the fuse box. And you're done. There is no inline fuse. But what year do you have?
F74B.
Okay, yeah, then it's usually shot. There's no, you always do the simplest, cheapest, easiest things first. So you can take the battery cover off and look at the fuel pump in there. Sometimes you can sort of see it, or get on your back and feel around up in there, and just make sure the wire hasn't fallen off or something stupid. Or look underneath the bonnet on the right-hand side there's a junction between the main wiring loom, which has got 50 wires in it, and the rear wiring loom, which has only got about a dozen. And where all those are all joined up, the color of the wires that you are looking for are white, no tracers, white. That's ignition on, unfused. So the fuel pump is on an unfused circuit. That's about the only thing that's on the unfused circuit except the coil. So both of those are on an unfused circuit. So
Does it make a difference if I have a Weber? I don't have SEUs,
no,
so
it doesn't make any difference at all. Nope. No, you just find someplace to mount it up underneath the bonnet and over by the brake master cylinder someplace, and run some wires over to the fuel pump and you're all set, or over to the fuse box, you're all set.
sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So John, are you ever in New York?
No, my daughter lived in the city for a couple of years, but she quit about 3 days after COVID got to be a big thing. So now she lives in Los Angeles. So no, I don't come there often. But if you want to send me a note on email, I'll keep your address around. You're talking about the city?
Yes.
Yeah. Send me an email and I'll keep your name around. And who knows? I go all kinds of places all the time. So love to stop by, see your car.
Okay, appreciate it. All right. Okay, John. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Next one up here, we have Dean Webb with a 72 midget wiper motor. So Dean Webb, are you still on? Oh, we've lost Dean Webb, or Dean Webb can't get on, or something or other. 72 wiper motor, are they 2-speed? Yes. Ran before installing during a restoration, but the car didn't seem to want to park when turned off. Now it's installed and I've got no power to it. Wiring to the wiper cannon plug seems to be in order, and the switch and wires check out for continuity, but no power. A white with green wire coming off the ignition, dead ends in a bundle. White with green is accessory. That would be what the radio would be hooked to. That goes hot when you turn the key to the first position. I wonder which wire in the wiper system goes to, it doesn't. My schematic is too blurred to read. So if you're still on, Dean Webb, you can send me an email and I will send you a wiring diagram. But there's a green wire, which should be hot, that goes to the wiper motor. So you've got 5 connections on the wiper motor. There's a green, there's a black, there's a light green with red, a light green with blue, and a light green with brown. And those all together work, cause the wiper motor to work and to park. And I can explain this all to you more clearly, but you have to have green. The green wire in that bundle has to be hot. Why isn't it hot? Well, the easy way, of course, is the second fuse down in your fuse box that goes between the white wires and the green wires is popped. But that means that nothing else works. The tach doesn't work, the gauges don't work, the brake lights, the turn signals, all the stuff that comes alive when the car is on means that doesn't work. But it might be up underneath, especially after you've done a restoration, all this stuff's going on. Could be you've got the wiper arms in the wrong place and the motor's on and it's trying to move down, but it can't go down because it's already all the way down. There's a lot of stuff that might be going on. But I can certainly send you a wiring diagram if you send me a note. And he continues and says, one of my favorite tools are the different long nose pliers with surgical forceps. Yeah, those can be very, very handy. Indeed, they can. Absolutely. Mr. Curl. I cut off the end of a trashed input shaft and use it to align the clutch disc and pressure plate to the flywheel. Yeah, that's really handy. That's a nice special tool to have. And if you cut off the gear end, you don't have to, of an old first motion shaft, you can use that as a spigot bush removal tool. Now, you wouldn't use this on a T-type because first motion shafts are probably dear. But on an MGB 68 through 80, where anyone who's gotten his MG parts somehow has an extra gearbox, those parts are real cheap. You can use those by filling the back of the crankshaft with grease where the spigot bush is. Just keep pushing grease in there with your finger, try to get the air out. And then put the first motion shaft into the center of the bearing and hit that first motion shaft with a great big hammer, and you get hydraulic pressure. So since the crank can't go forward, the spigot bush comes rearwards. And almost always that works as a really effective way of quickly getting the spigot bush out of the back of the crank. Although we saw tonight that there was a lady finger used for grabbing hold of it and forcing, levering it out. So, anyway, yeah.
And you can also use a die to screw it into that something, and then it'll walk it out.
Absolutely.
It's not quite as messy.
Yeah, that's right, and I think the spigot bush size on an MGB, the diameter, the inner diameter is 800 thousandths. So you need like a 7/8. It's got to be a really, really big tap.
I think it is.
Screw it in, it hits the bottom, you keep turning it, something's got to move, and the spigot bush just walks right back out. It's really, really nice. So Mark Anderson says, I would add an endoscope camera to the tool list. It's fairly cheap on Amazon, and they're really neat. They are really neat. It's a tiny camera with a light on one long, stiff wire, and a video monitor on the other end, great for locating that nut or bolt you just dropped at the back of the engine. That's cool. I'm not in favor of them. I don't see that they're necessary to look inside an engine to figure out what's going on. You take the spark plug out and look inside there, because if anything's going on, anything, you got to take the head off. So it doesn't matter if there's a hole in the piston or a hole in the valve. You still got to take the head off. But that's those little endoscopes. Those are cool. Some of my guys at the shop had those. They're real neat.
Except when the nut from your carburetor air filter cover falls into your cylinder, then you need the endoscope to find the sumbitch.
You still have to take the head off, right? Did you take the head off, or did you go in there with a screwdriver?
Before I took the head off, I did the endoscope, only to find the one nut sitting on top of the piston. You remember that, John?
I do. I very distinctly, coming back from GOF Central. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. All right, here we got Phil Kalura, 74 rear prop shaft, universal joint, grease fitting problem, cannot inject grease into it. Seems like there's a blockage. There could be. It could be that the grease is so old and so hard that you cannot get enough pressure to push through it. So I tried to unscrew the fitting, but my sockets don't fit in there. Any suggestions short of disconnecting the rear prop shaft nuts and bolts? So my thought here is that it is the grease is rock hard and no longer fluid. So I'm going to tell you to take your propane torch and go up in there and heat the center of the U-joint at the same time you've got the grease gun on it. Couple severe warnings here. You're underneath the car, you're real close to the gas tank. You might not choose to do that. When you do go underneath the car with a propane torch, you always carry a blowgun with you, so you can blow out a fire when the grease catches on fire or something catches on fire. You can blow it out. Always have a fire extinguisher handy, and so forth. And then the other one, what was the other? You can burn the inside of the carpet. You can burn the carpet, but if it's a little later model MGB, you don't have to worry about that because that's underneath the console. So that's, oh, and then you're hanging on that grease gun with a great big handle and you're forcing. And all of a sudden something lets loose and you get a squirt of hot grease on your cheek or your eye or in your hair or something or other. So you just gotta be cautious using heat, but we use heat all the time, especially on kingpins up front when we're doing a complete lubrication. You put a grease gun on there and you couldn't get any fresh grease in a kingpin for love or money. And you heat those things up and that grease would all turn nice and liquid. You'd pump that gun and flood the whole thing with grease. Not that it would change all the wear that was there, but at least you could grease it up.
John, what about using a heat gun?
Yeah, sure.
That way you avoid the flames, because that's what I use in my kingpins.
It's gonna be underneath there for an extra hour.
Oh, yeah. It still gets hot, trust me.
Yep. So sure. Heat gun, sure. But you're gonna be down there longer, so the carpet's gonna get hotter, just because you're there longer, that's all. All right, and Judd's got a link from T-Talk on this oil filter adapter. That's very nice. And we got Mr. Curl here. Took an MGB wire wheel spindle and knock off using a lathe, drilled out to fit a standard speed balancer. I can chuck it up on the balancer mount and with a wheel, and using the knockoff to hold everything together, I can balance wire wheels at the local tire shop. Okay, so what we're talking about here from Mr. Curl is that the to get the wheel balanced, the wire wheel balanced, you should really be using a front hub to hold it concentric on the machine. Generally speaking, it's going to be concentric, but if you use the hub, if you can use a hub, it will do it absolutely. Just like the row style wheels. Row style wheels are not centered off the hole where the hubcap goes. They're centered off the four lugs. So if you want to have it balanced correctly, you've got to have someone who can put it onto 4 half-inch studs on a 4.5-inch diagonal, and in that way get the wheel balanced correctly. So let's see, Steve Shupak to everybody. He's got a link here for what it is. You can click on it.
It's the magnetic socket inserts.
Oh, all right. Okay, Alan, that's what you got to find from Steve Shupak here. Here's the magnetic inserts. You can get them right off Amazon.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, 18 bucks.
That's good.
All right, and John O'Leary says the dog bone tool is available in metric on Amazon. Of course, we don't need it. What we need is in British, right? We need it in British on Amazon. But anyway, I'm sure you can buy them for Imperial also. So let's see, regarding the fuel pump cork gasket, most people probably know this already, but I learned there are 2 different types of cork sheet. So we're talking about an MGB fuel pump, and we're talking about a hemispherical cover that's a little bit larger than a silver dollar. It's ever so slightly concave, and there's a type of cork that goes inside of there. Anyway, I found that the stores have NBR cork, which is rubberized and does not leak. NBR. I don't know what NBR stands for. I'll find out later. NBR cork.
Nitrile bonded rubber.
Thank you. Okay.
I just looked it up.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Yep. And it doesn't leak. Normal cork is going to leak just a little bit. So Wayne says, hi, John. So Tom Gunderson, medical tools, scalpel, all kinds of blades. Absolutely. You can always go to your dentist and get dentist tools, for doing stuff, but they're pretty weak. if you put any force on them at all, they snap. I mean, they're real nice, and they cost the dentist just a fortune. But once, I don't know what happens to them after they use them a certain amount of times, but usually they have quite a bundle of them used. And if you ask, sometimes they'll either save them for you or they have them. We so many years ago, we had a dentist from Windsor, Ontario, Art Stoishan, and he came for a 3-day seminar. Sunday morning on the seminar, I went through my toolbox and just pulled every drawer open and said, look at what I got in here. And I'd show it and talk about it and everything. And I had what I call dentist tools, which are really layout scribes for sheet metal work. They're long, they're really sharp, and they're real pointy. One's got a pointed end, one's got an L on the other end. They're layout scribes, but look at it. We call them dental tools. And he came up during the break and he said, let me see one of those dental tools. So I showed it to him and he goes, we wouldn't use these on a horse in Canada. I said, well, Art, they're not really dentist tools. I said, they're layout scribes. Anyway, real dentist tools are pretty weak for doing almost anything on the car. Robert, everybody, 67 midget, driving on the highway around 65 miles an hour with the outside temp around 30 Celsius. So the rest of us, that's warm. The engine temp registered around 212. Is this normal? Driving around town or backcountry roads, it stays around 190. I'm worried about overheating complications if I drive on the highway. I wonder how guys like Judd get on in the south, and if he has the same problem as well. I can't imagine going 90 miles an hour in my car with 4 gears only, let alone having the engine running at such a high temp. So 212, first of all, 212 is not too high. 230 is not too high. It's only too high when it boils while it's driving, and that isn't going to happen. The most common cause for high temperatures, like the kind you explained here, is that the timing is incorrect. The timing is critical. Timing on all of our cars, not V8s and not twin cams, but all the rest of our cars, the timing is 32 degrees before top dead center at full mechanical advance, vacuum disconnected. So T-types don't have vacuums. You don't have to worry about those. The 69 Sprite doesn't have a vacuum. You don't have to worry about that if your vacuum is not hooked up. Well, it can't be hooked up while you're doing this. So you have to have a dial back timing light. You've got to rev the engine up until the mechanical advance stops. That's around 3,000-4,000 RPM. Engines are really screaming. You got your timing light in one hand, and you're looking at the timing marks, and you're revving up the engine with the other hand, unless of course it's made before 1971, and then somebody else is up above revving it up, and you're lying on your belly like a snake, looking up at the timing marks at 6 o'clock from underneath. But anyway, 32 degrees maximum. That's probably where your problem lies with that overheating.
So to expand on that, John, if you don't mind, is too much advance going to create overheating? And what does not enough advance do?
Both. Grossly retarded puts a lot of heat in the radiator, and if it's over advanced, it'll put extra heat in the radiator. I mean, out of that gallon of gasoline that you buy, it's about 120,000 BTUs. 1/3 of it goes to the radiator, 1/3 of it goes down the exhaust, and if everything's perfect, 1/3 of it's available at the flywheel. So any bit of missed tuning and so forth, and you can end up with too much heat in the radiator. All of our cars are designed to dissipate the heat that's created. And again, that 212 isn't an issue. You can go up to 230 on an MGA. You can go all the way up to 80 pounds of oil pressure on the safety gauge. It'll spin way past 230 as long as it doesn't boil over while you're driving. As long as you got coolant in the engine, it cannot get too hot. you know, you might have a problem with restart, something like that. Sure, of course. But it isn't gonna hurt the engine.
Well, since I had the engine cleaned out, the radiator cleaned out, replaced the leaking water pump on the TD, well, I'm never gonna go 90, but I can roll 70 pretty much all day on an 85 degree day. And it'll sit there between 90 and 100. And that's just fine. Of course, it's unpressurized, so it's going to start boiling a little bit over 100. I'm up 1,000 feet above sea level, so boiling. But if you have the right amount of coolant in there, that raises your boiling point to what, about 230 or something like that. So you ought to be pretty good.
Yeah, if you put antifreeze in there, it isn't gonna boil. So what's that bolt line on top of the piston? That's 2/4 of a thread for 8x1, but that looks like a sump bolt.
No, it was actually the little stud that holds the cover on the cheap air cleaner, pancake type air cleaner that sucked through the carburetor and I didn't have an endoscope, so I did what you said. I pulled the head, and there was that little bugger.
Oh my gosh!
You wouldn't believe how much noise a little thing like that can make.
I know. Well, yeah.
I can imagine.
Yeah, Doug had a nut. Was that a bolt or a nut, Doug? That popped,
Two nuts. Two nuts.
Popped off of his on a Weber, air cleaner, and danced around, and they got so excited dancing that they danced down the throat, you know, and yeah, so.
And this went right through the HS2s.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! And through the valve. I mean, the valve only opens up. The valve only opens up. It's on an MGB. The valve only opens up about 5/16 of an inch. I mean, it's just hardly anything. It's like hard to believe that would even get through there. But if it's like up against the valve and it's getting pushed, and finally wears down and will go through. Well, that's embarrassing. Oh my gosh. Let's see. Dean Webb says, "Who repairs wiper motors?" I don't know. I don't know. I see two fellow cigar smokers, Pat and Doug, wonder what their fave go-to cigar is. Hey, so Pat, you still on? What's your favorite cigar in California? I didn't even know you could smoke out there.
I import them from Pennsylvania. I'm a Hoyo de Monterey fan.
All right, and
Hondurans.
And Doug, what cigar do you smoke? Doug's got his VF, very fine. Yeah, Victor Fermonte. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm not a cigar smoker, so I don't know.
Vegefina, probably.
All right, okay. But I don't know who repairs wiper motors. I don't. Usually, you can find a good used one. And again, my go-to place always is. I mean, I know there's. Oh gosh, Bob and Gloria. What's that place in Ohio? I can never remember the name of it, but I always go to. Where's that? Team Triumph. That's why
he's got a half full of used parts, all categories. But yeah, I know you have a hard time saying Triumph out loud.
It's a Team Triumph in Ohio, and then Sports Car Craftsman in Arvada, Colorado, Denver, Colorado. Sports Car Craftsman. Both those guys will do. They've got a wonderful supply of used stuff. So Robert, everybody, thanks, John. Helpful for sure. I wonder if my distributor may need some attention. It might contribute to poor timing. Yes, but it's not the total advance, but yeah, it could be advanced too soon or advanced too slowly, but we're going for total timing, which is when you're asking the engine to do the hardest work it's ever going to do. When it's running down the road at 70 miles an hour, it doesn't work harder than that. Well, under full throttle acceleration, it does. But you know, that's that you want it to run correctly up there. So Crystal, as I understand SU fuel pumps, the difference between the probably 75 has a 2BA ground screw, while a post 1985 has a 4BA screw. How can I determine whether my pump has a 2 or 4? Why are you asking this, Crystal? What's up? What's going on?
I need to rebuild the fuel, my SU fuel pump, and if rebuild kits come in for either a 2BA fuel pump or a 4BA fuel pump.
Oh, the 4BA is the midget one, isn't it? Isn't that the midget pump, the little tiny one? I get the 2BA. I get the 2BA. That's the and what possible differences are there in the pumps? I don't know. I'm buffaloed here. I don't know.
Yeah.
But isn't a 2BA screw very close to a 1032 screw?
It's exactly a 10. It is for all intents and purposes a 1032. Thank
That's
you.
all. That is exactly what I need to know. There we go, 1032.
Yep.
All right.
In a 4BA is 4BA. It's all on its own. So it hasn't got an American equivalent. So
Well, when I looked up the specs on it, it went over my head and says the 2BA is like 4.7 millimeters. And I'm going, 4.7 millimeters. Is that the center shank of the screw or the outer where the threads are, or
So
there's distance between the threads?
So if you can take that screw out and get a 1032 to screw in 4 or 5 threads, that's the 2BA. In the
2BA?
2BA is much larger, twice the diameter of a 4BA. It goes in reverse. Go figure.
Thank you.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Brad Schwartz, please comment on the compatibility of aluminum radiators and water pump housings with cast iron and copper and brass components in the cooling system. I really don't know. I do know that everybody just is agog about the aluminum radiators. I know those will take the green ethylene glycol coolant, works just great. The aluminum water pumps are all yucky. They get a cast iron pump next time you can. But I've never seen any corrosion or don't know of any that's occurring on our cars because of a mismatch of metals on the inside. I don't know of that.
John?
Yeah.
They were looking for those wiper motor rebuilds.
Yeah.
There's a place in California called Eurton, EURTON, electric company.
Okay.
They're not cheap, but they will rebuild they will rebuild wiper motors.
Okay. Thank you.
So if you want to check it out.
Thanks.
Mhm.
All right, from Wayne. Hi, John. Question about oil pressure 1500 MGA, recently reconditioned engine with new rings, bearings, only done about 12,000 kilometers since being installed in the car. After a run the other day of just over 50 kilometers, I noticed the oil pressure was down to about 10 PSA at idle. Doesn't make any difference. Idle is not a problem. Engine temperature was around 190. So here we've got Fahrenheit and pounds per square inch all combined with kilometers. Then I read a bit on Barney's site about low oil pressure and potential damage. Well, yeah, absolutely. I put a new oil pressure relief valve spring in and ran the engine up to just above 60 PSI. After startup, when the engine warms up, it's back down around to 40 PSI at 2000 RPM. No, that's wrong. That's awful. Something more has to happen. And then let's see. So it goes on anyway. So here we go. Wayne, are you still on? Have you waited all this time for an answer? Wayne is no longer on or can't talk. So oil pressure, hot idle, it just doesn't make any difference. August in Michigan on tarmac and the engine's ticking over at 600 RPM and the oil pressure is down around 10 pounds. It doesn't really make any difference as long as the instant you hit the throttle, the oil pressure pops back up to the blow off, and blow off ought to be up around 75 pounds. Certainly over 50. Oh my gosh, it has to be over 50. And I wouldn't settle for that. Over 60, yes. But if it's a 1968 through 1971 MGB, it's got an electric oil pressure gauge, and you can't trust any of those. They're all wrong. But a reconditioned MGA 1500 engine ought to be blowing off at about 75 pounds. And that's a function of the oil pressure relief valve and the shims that are behind the spring. I use 1/4-inch lock washers, 1/4-inch helical lock washers that I twist straight, and I put 2 of them in there, one in the valve and one in the cap. And it makes it impossible, all but impossible, to force it back into the engine and get it stuck. But that's what I go for. That'll give you 75, 80 pounds oil pressure. That's what you want. And here we go. Let's see. Videos on wiper motor repair. Look at midget wiper motor repair. Thomas Tice on YouTube. Okay, that works unless you need brushes or you got to have the armature rewound or something. So,
Hey, John?
Yes.
John, I'm sorry to butt in, but it's going back to the last question.
Yes.
Regarding the oil pressure.
Yeah.
I have 51 MGTD. It runs pretty much all the time around 39 PSI. I put the restrictor in as you've recommended, and I really didn't get a bump in oil pressure, maybe 5-10 pounds. Now that the oil pressure is sensed at the head, not the lower portion in the block.
You're losing 20 pounds there.
Yeah, what do you think? Am I okay running this?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I think if you read the oil pressure off the main gallery down below, I think you'd probably find that you got 60, 70 pounds.
All right, good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, well, there. You don't have to worry about that tonight. Good. Dave Smittle, I've been trying to locate Diamond Wheel in Milwaukee. There's a Diamond Racing Wheels. Yes, that's who they are. Yes. They don't have very good reviews. Well, my experience with them was wonderful. So that's all I can tell you about Diamond Wheel. The guy showed me all around the place, and I got my wheels back, and I was just more than pleased. Can you recommend a before the pump cleanable filter? Any clear filter, but oh my gosh, you don't want to put it in front of the pump, because when you go to change it, when you have to change it, you're going to unscrew your arms are up like this, you're underneath the car, then if you're lying down or car's on a hoist or what, and the gasoline's going to come out and it's going to run right down into your underarm. And there's only one place in your body that's more sensitive to gasoline than your underarm. Your underarm takes a real strong second. So it's real creepy. Now, I have seen people put a petcock, so you get a line that comes out of the fuel tank, a shutoff valve, and then a filter. Okay, but that still means that when you take the filter loose, gasoline's going to run into your underarm. So I hate to have filters there. After the pump, yes. If there's so much crap in the tank that there's a problem, change the tank. You got a T-type, okay, I understand. You can't do that. That's a $2,000 project in a lot of time. So
O'Reilly's got that filter.
Who does?
O'Reilly.
Okay, see-through filter. Yeah.
Yeah. It comes apart and you can change the filter piece inside, so you can repair it. It is clear.
Okay, all right, or you can just get a throwaways, but it's real important to get a see-through filter. Real important to get that. But Dean says easy to pinch off the fuel line with vice grips. You still get gasoline up in your underarm. So now let's put the filter after the pump. Oh, on the T-type, on a T-type, there's the lower part of the tank, which has got the drain on a T-type, and then just a little bit, about that far away from the bottom of the tank, is the pickup, and that's got a really fine mesh copper screen on it. So if you're having a problem with a T-type tank and there's a lot of junk in it, take out drain the tank, take out the filter screen, cut that filter screen off, put a piece of pipe on it about that tall, copper pipe, put the filter screen on top of it. Now, of course, your empty is no longer the bottom of the tank. Your empty is as high as your piece of copper pipe, but then all the sediment is floating around in the bottom, and you got cleaner gas up above to go into the filter. I've done that before.
John?
Yes.
When you're working under a car and gasoline, always tie rags around your wrists. It keeps the gas out of your armpits.
Thank you. Thank you. You think I would have come up with that by now? For as much as that's happened,
I always remember after the fact.
Yep. Thank you.
John, another good thing to do there, if you're worried about the gas getting into your armpits, is smoke a cigarette while you're doing that.
Yeah, then the gas won't get there. Yeah.
John, it seems to me, and I had a filter pre-pump on my T-type, which I think is dead wrong. You got a filter in the tank, you got a filter in the pump, and you got a filter in each carburetor. And unless you're got unbelievable, well, even if you got horrible garbage in the tank, it's not going to get through all three of those screens. And if it's small enough to get through all those screens, it's going to go right out the tailpipe.
Most of it, except what collects in the bottom of the float bowls. Yeah.
You clean those every once in a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is 9:08 p.m. I think we had, I looked at about 119. Marty isn't here to count tonight. I haven't seen Doug Clark on. Sometimes they have a Chicago meeting the same night we have our event.
Barney got stuck in Nevada.
What's that?
Barney got stuck in Nevada.
Really? What's he doing
up? I think it was a crank bearing or something like that.
Oh, jeez.
I talked to Cecilia yesterday, and she told me that.
Wait a minute. You talked to Cecilia, or Cecilia talked to you?
I talked to Cecilia about, and she told me that Barney had just called her.
Oh man, he just had that engine built too within the past year or so.
Moss wouldn't answer the phone.
Hey, they're understaffed. It's just, Anyway, 2 weeks from tonight, we're going to have a talk about colors, car colors, all the original colors, autumn red, MG red, and tundra. I love those earth colors from the 70s, tundra, and harvest gold, lime flower, chartreuse. So anyway, we'll have lots of stuff to show about. So if you got a background picture that you can get of your car, you can go through and people can talk about the color of their own car and how they've changed it into something more modern or try to find the original colors. So anyway, Tom Gunderson, how come you don't have overriders on the front of your MGA? Because it looks bad? You think that's a cleaner look? It is a cleaner look. Anyway.
Hey, John.
Yeah, Gary.
Yeah, hi. For showing our cars, how can one post a JPEG as we're speaking?
I have no idea. I really don't know. I know how to picture MG. I don't know how to make my computer work. I only know how to turn it on and make it work from my end, but you can.
How are you?
You get a background picture.
Oh, that's too much technology for me.
Okay.
The host.
So, okay.
Well done, John. Loved it. Thank you. Bye.
Hey, see you later. All right, it's 9/11. It's time for a show. 9/11. Yeah, 9/11. That shows up on Wednesday again already. So until then, I'm going to go to the gallery. We still have 73 people still hanging on here. So thanks everybody for tonight.
Hey,
And-
John, wait a minute, real quick.
Yeah.
To answer his question and change in the picture. If he goes up to his picture on the Zoom session, you see it in the right-hand corner, 3 little dots.
Hang
Click
on,
those.
I'm looking right now. I'm looking right now at the web page. On the top right-hand corner, I see recording, sign in, and view.
Sue's always telling me. But then when she's talking to me, I'll say, you don't need to be quite that loud.
I find it on the bottom of my screen someplace. It's like, I don't know. I've got a different screen than you do because I'm the host. But when I'm on one of those, you can change your background and download a JPEG from your computer into this. But beyond that, I'm not sure. Other than I know you can do it because I've done it because why? Because if I'm speaker view, no, video, no, that turned my video off. I'm gonna turn it, how can I, there it's back on. Security share screen, I don't want to do that. I don't know more.
If you go up to the top right-hand corner, change your view. There's a word view and it looks like a checker box.
Yeah, I see it.
All
Yeah, I
right,
see it. Yeah.
click on that and select yours as gallery. Once you got your gallery, find your image, right? In other words, your face, your car. In the top right-hand corner of your picture, click on Edit Profile Picture.
Hang on. All right, I won't take any more time. I'll try to figure it out.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good night, John.
Hey, good night. Good night, everybody. Thanks for hanging in. Real nice session.
Good night.
Good night, John.
Catch you in
Good
2 weeks.
night.
Oh.
Okay. See ya. Good night. Stu Colt, nice to see you on tonight. Oh my gosh, Ron Nugent. You guys just got what, 5 earthquakes there yesterday?
Northern, up north, Northern California.
I think my daughter's moving to South Pasadena from Los Feliz. Yeah, I think so. Anyway.
That's a nice part of town.
Yep. All right. Well, everyone, thank you very much. I'm going to take my leave. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
We'll see everybody next time. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Safety fast.